Hello and welcome to the School Safety Free Period. I'm Amanda Klinger.
And I'm Dr. Amy Klinger.
We're the founders and directors of the Educators School Safety Network. We're a national nonprofit and we provide educator-focused school safety, professional development resources, and technical assistance to K-12 schools throughout the U.S. and Canada. You can find us at www.eschoolsafety.org. In our daily work as trainers and researchers, we typically take a fairly studious and serious approach to the critical work of school safety and violence prevention. However, in this, our school safety free period, we're a little less formal, we're a little less academic, and a lot more fun. We examine school safety issues and current events in a more informal, conversational fashion. So let's get started. What do you have for us today?
So today we have a little bit of a different setup. We have a special guest. We don't have very many of them, but this one's a very special. My son, Andrew Klinger, who brings a lot more to the table than just the benefit and luck of being my son. He has a pretty diverse background in emergency management, the fire services and emergency services, and to top it all off, as a school administrator. So it's a lot of the perspectives that we talk about a good amount here on the podcast. So we dragged him in to have a little bit of a conversation, and I'm hoping to hear from a couple of different perspectives, but mostly the emergency side of things. So welcome.
Well, thank you. I feel like I was a little voluntold for it, but this it'll still work.
Andy's our behind-the-scenes critic after podcasts. He listens to them and then tells me how often I have coughed or done something. So,
how many times your computer?
Are you going to listen to this one and critique yourself?
I'm going to give live critiques.
Okay. All right, so I think we should start with, you and I were having a little brief conversation. We should start with your pet peeves. So you're wearing both your administrative and your emergency responder hat. And let's talk about your pet peeves.
So I don't think we have enough time in the podcast to do all my pet peeves, but we will try to do a few of them that are more related to schools. So one of them I like to just start off with is we were at a school, I don't know however long ago, that they had a policy for their fire alarm and a policy for their fire drill. And there were two separate policies. And that's a pet peeve of mine, as that should be one policy. You have a fire alarm, fire activation policy, and the fire drill is what you are practicing that policy with. They should not be separate. We do this, we do A for our fire drill, but we do B when it's the real thing. It should be the same thing.
Yeah, and I believe in that particular case, they were even titled that way. It was like fire drill procedures and then an actual fire evacuation procedure.
Yes.
Yeah.
I found it because it was on the wall right by your classroom door, like all your emergency signage should be. It should be, uniform throughout the building, so it doesn't matter what classroom you're in. You know to look at towards the door, and that's where your emergency signage is. And they had their fire alarm sign on what to do and their fire drill right above that on what to do.
All right, so we shouldn't do that, but I think that really speaks to probably a larger concern, which is that you're not really thinking about the fact that you might actually have a fire evacuation that will not mirror what you do in your drill every day.
So you have your two different, I don't know if this is necessarily school of thoughts, but I would say two different types of fire alarm activations. And I get the sentiment behind what they were looking for, if this is a drill versus this is real. But really it should be, we have that nuisance alarm is what we like to call it, where you have the smoke detectors go off, the kitchen burns something, a dodgeball hit the pole station, and it goes off. See, now I'm coughing and I'm correcting you. So the fire alarm goes off, and oftentimes I see is so that accidental alarm goes off, and we, let's assume the principal goes and checks that it was an accidental alarm, or we get on the PA and we say, oh, that was just an accident. Everyone continue about your day. And we start to condition people with, when that alarm goes off, let's all wait and see if it's real or not. I don't really want to go outside yet. I don't want to stop my lunch. I don't want to stop my free period, so on. And really, it should be, if I get it's an accidental and it's a nuisance, but it's a good training of this was unscheduled. Let's see how this really folds out. So the school where, so my official title is Director of Operations. At my school, when anytime that the alarm goes off, we do the full plan. We evacuate the building fully. We go all the way out to our stadium, and then we take our attendance and our accountability. So I always look at, how, as a fireman, how quick can you get out of your building? But also, I like to know that when I pull up on scene, I ask the person in charge, the principal, whoever that person is, are you 100% sure that everyone is out of the building? Because it is not a I don't know, maybe answer. It is a yes or no. So if the answer is yes, I've accounted for everybody, we're not going to necessarily dedicate personnel to go in the building. Well, we usually will, work on fire operations then, extinguishing the fire. But if you say no, our first priority is life safety, and we're going to dedicate a lot of people to go into that building to go look for someone that could just be sitting out on the bleachers. So it's very
So if you say no, does that make me a bad principal? Because I think people will say yes when they actually mean, I'm not sure, but I think so.
The times that I've done this, or we've done this as a company, I would say I get that answer first is yes, I'm sure. Oh, no, I'm not. Like, as you're walking away, maybe don't really hold on. And so, yes, I would rather you caution on the I'm not sure. I'm 90% sure, but I'm not 100% sure. And that's our job. We will go and dedicate that, but we don't want to do that just because we're not sure. We don't have that process. And as we found in our travels around different schools in the nation, that it is a large gambit of we really knock it out of the park, or we kind of do, or, well, we're just happy that people walk away. So we tell people, get away from the building, 10, 20 feet, call it a day. And then we have some that go, the extra mile, we really get away from the building, and, we do this full. But you want to find that sweet spot of, you really should be able to get 100% accountability within 15 minutes. Anything under 15 minutes, great. Anything over 15 minutes, we're already going to be dedicating personnel.
But let's discuss the definition of accountability and accounting for everyone, because we often see administrators that will say, I have accounted for all the students. But you have no idea if the cook stayed in the kitchen, if the janitor went out, if the substitute teacher was just sitting in her room. And that's where it sometimes breaks down.
Yeah, and again, it's so hard to say here's what the standard is when there's so much case by case, where your school is located. We've been to schools that are rather landlocked up against houses, and they have to cross a busy street, and it's hard to get there. There's multiple buildings. But to answer your question, I'm mainly looking for the students, because we're going to operate off of your students need help getting out of the building, whether you're K-8 or K-12, your students need help. The adults are going to be the secondary of, they should be helping the students. They should be doing their job. Is the janitor out of the building? Well, no, he's helping clear the building and checking that too. But then you also want to not discard them. So, okay, we're 100% students. Now, how are we looking for our staff? And I'm a big advocate of having a buddy staff, or a couple different ones that, I always look for the teacher across the hall. I always look for that office person that's 2 doors down from me, and vice versa. So that, at my school, we kind of have, all the students have an assigned spot to go to on the field, and they go by homeroom. So it doesn't matter what time of day it is. They go to the same spot. They go to the same teacher. They're with the same students. So even the students realize, oh, who's missing, who's not. But then our staff goes to the same congregation area, and we kind of do, right now it's a little more informal than I would like, but they kind of do a who's here, who isn't. And, a lot of schools have it's my free period, I went to lunch, I left campus, I was sick that day. It's hard to really see for the adults. And so we're working on a system we're using where you can check in on your phone, where you would get that alert, even if you are not even on campus. As long as you have cell phone service, you would get an alert that the building had an evacuation, and on your phone, you would give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And you could give us a thumbs up, it means you're good. We don't really mind where you're at right now. We're just saying you're accounted for. And that's how we're tackling our staffing issue. But if you don't want to look at the technology of that, or pay for that per se, I think the the quickest one is just to kind of have that buddy system of who we're looking for. But to answer your original question, if I'm asking you as the principal, do you have everyone accounted for? I'm asking for the students. And just because you say 100% yes doesn't mean that we're not going to put people in the building. We're still going to go put the fire out, but our priority is going to be the fire, not personnel.
Well, there's two things I want to highlight about what you said. One of them is the idea of students going back to their homeroom, which I think probably some of our listeners are like, oh, I don't know. And this is a secondary situation. But I do think there's real value in having them go back to homeroom so that for the entire year, it's the same 22 kids. It's not like, oh, this semester I have this class and then I don't know who was here. So you're looking for the same people and the kids can join in. And also with the staff thing, both of those work to, I think fire drill procedures become, or fire evacuation procedures become more arduous when everything is predicated on just the principal. So this way, the kids are helping to identify who's not here. The teachers are identifying who else isn't here, rather than everybody just stands there and hangs out and chit-chats while the administrator runs around trying to account for 800 people.
I did catch where you said fire drill.
Yeah, and then I fixed
while I'm live critiquing.
Did you notice that?
I did. But yes, no, I agree with that. And that kind of leads me to another pet peeve inside of this pet peeve is oftentimes, and this is not just at my...
It's a Russian doll of pet peeves.
Oh, it's a dark hole that we can go down.
Okay.
But this has happened at other schools that we've been at, not just the school I work at, but we'll be conducting our evaluation of it, or I'll be moving to walk to that principal and say, "Are you there?" And someone cuts you off and goes, "Hey, now that I've been looking for you. Are you free to meet next week? Are you?" Nope, we are in this fire alarm evacuation mode. It's not, "Hey, I've been trying to catch you."
Which is the difference between it's just a drill and we're doing a fire evacuation. The one thing I wanted to highlight that you talked about, though, a little bit earlier was this idea of, I'm going to take time to investigate to see if it was an accident. That, someone hit in gym, hit the fire alarm. The time that it takes me to figure out if it's an accident, we should be evacuating. So, this idea of let's hold and make sure we don't accidentally evacuate, it's a pretty low stakes. So we went out of the building and then we got that practice and we came back in. And that always makes me think about, so your fire evacuation protocol versus your fire drill protocol. Is your fire evacuation protocol just everyone screaming and running for their life? So it's a chaos one, and then the other one is orderly?
Well,
what's the difference?
We only practice the fire drill.
That's true.
We don't know what it looks like.
In the moment, everyone's just hysterical. So
yeah, and again, I want to have that disclaimer of, I'm not saying there's never a spot to stop that fire alarm. I'm sure there's 10 different cases where we would want to get on the PA and say we don't want to do that. But in general, you do not want that to be the crutch you lean on.
Yeah, because I think there is a real bias that people believe that people think that there's either a fire that's catastrophic that takes the whole building down, or there's nothing. And I don't think people realize sometimes that you can have something that isn't necessarily imminently life-threatening, but that you need to get the kids out of the building.
And I guess from my personal perspective, a lot, especially newer schools, but even schools built in the 50s on, are not very flammable. They're all very concrete and they're sturdy buildings. So it's not that this fire had a rampage through the building and you just you had seconds to get out. What is more practical is that's the time where someone panicked, someone got stuck in the bathroom, their exit was blocked. It's small little things that start to lead up to it's a larger thing. And it's not that they necessarily were in the room that's on fire, but they can be affected by the smoke, can be affected by the less oxygen. But what's the biggest concern for me is that they've just been disoriented. It's low visibility. We have a lot of synthetics that burn with a lot of smoke and rather quickly, that it's not that the building got burned to the ground as much as I've been in this building for 30 years, and as soon as it got smoky and dark, I had no idea where it was, and I wasn't moving towards the exit. I was actually moving further into the building.
Yeah.
And then especially...
And I don't think people realize that. I think that's a really good point, is everyone assume, until you've been in it, you don't realize how quickly your environment becomes altered.
Well, and that's where I see a lot of, when we do these assessments with other schools, that I'll walk around and there'll be that office person or that administrator is going, I'm just finishing this email and I'm leaving. This doesn't count. It does count. It does count because it sets the tone for it. Your rest of your staff sees it. The student sees it. Here's my pet peeve inside of pet peeve, is when we go outside to watch the alarm, then I like to watch how the kids don't have coats on, but all the teachers have coats on.
Yeah.
And you can see who went to their lockers and who went to and it doesn't seem like it's a big deal. We just stopped at the lockers on the way out. But it's also the miracle on the Hudson. Everyone grabbed their luggage before we get off the plane. Nope, it's a plane crash. Get off the plane. So if you start to condition people, well, let's see what the temperature out. Let's see if it's raining. Let's see what's going on. So I get my stuff together before I leave. That becomes the norm. So when you have a kid that's in gym class now, their muscle memory is, I still have to go clear across the building to go to my locker to get my coat, and then I'm going to go out that exit. And it shouldn't be like that. And again, I'm sure we can find, we're in the middle of a blizzard, and this is why, I'm sure there's some condition to it.
But by and large.
But it happens very, very often where, especially when we know it's a planned fire drill, where the teachers happen to be getting their stuff together, and I've got everything ready to go, and that is not how these operate.
Well, and to your point about schools being so much, they are not going to burn to the ground like a little, wooden house, but we see so many schools that have such high fire loads in areas where nobody would necessarily notice something was happening until it had become a much bigger fire.
Yeah, and that's a whole different pet peeve of mine is the fire loads. And
I was moving you on to the next one.
People putting stuff on top of shelving so it's up against the ceiling and then your sprinklers can't get it, but we don't have time for that either. But to that point of the fire load, it also becomes very quickly of what's getting in the way of that evacuation. Well, I can see my exit very nice, it's clear and everything, but yet I've got tables and chairs and everything stacked on top of it. And when we talked about, you get a little disoriented, you get a little bit of smoke. I can no longer feel the wall. I feel all of those flowers that we brought and all the boxes of Girl Scout cookies and everything else that gets in the way very quickly. Or just, in the panic of the moment, you have one student that knocks over your Jenga pile of stuff in your classroom, and now it's another 30 seconds, another minute of trying to get everybody out of it.
And that's you as the adult. Now, what about you as the third grader who has no experience with this level of disorientation, has not been in the building for 30 years? I mean, so we set ourselves up for failure, but we really set the kids up when we take it as, if we got plenty of time, we'll get our coats, and I understand we don't want to panic kids, but I think that's a really good point because we see it all the time. I was just at a conference 2 weeks ago where the fire alarm went off, and I think Amanda and I were the only people that got up and started moving towards the exit.
Well, it's definitely an issue. As the technology goes, this may be another podcast about panic alarms, but I'm currently not a fan of panic alarms. I feel like there's a lot of potential for nuisance alarms in that. But to relate that to fire, we do have better systems and we have more pull stations and we have more ways to set off that alarm, which inherently makes more ways to have those nuisance alarms. And it becomes the normal of, well, this ship isn't sinking, it must be somebody else's, or this isn't really happening. And you get very complacent with it. And it's just so easy to have that normalcy bias and to assume the otherwise. So if as teachers, as staff, that we're showing that we take it seriously, you'll raise those kids to have that this is always serious. And again, if you have that where this is a nuisance, we're having a fire alarm go off every day for a week, that's where you have to take care of that stuff very quickly so that it doesn't become something that's just gone and out of my mind. For example, if you would have, let's say you have your ringtone on your phone is the sound of the fire alarm, you condition yourself to go, that's just my phone. It's something.
Why would you have a ringtone on your phone that's a fire alarm?
I don't know why anybody has a ringtone anymore, but that is a thing that
really
where you can have not necessarily a fire alarm, but this is probably a little bit too much of a tangent, but on a SCBA, the firemen there's a pass device that goes off in case if a fireman passes out, isn't moving, it's a very unique alarm that goes off. And a lot of firemen like to put that on their phone. And I always say to them, you're conditioning yourself to think that's a normal phone.
It as something other than what it is.
It's kind of like if you made your air raid siren go off every time as your doorbell, and then the air raid siren really goes off, you don't think of that.
No, that's 100% true, because my ringtone is the Charlie Brown song, which you only hear at Christmas, and whenever a Christmas thing goes off, I pick up my phone because I think my phone's ringing. So yeah, okay.
Pavlov has something to say about that.
Was that a pet peeve, or doesn't that count as a pet peeve?
I don't think that counts as a pet peeve.
Okay.
I will add in my last little tidbit, though, of pull stations. Again, as a general rule, if someone asks you where's the closest pull station to your classroom to where you currently are, the pull station is how you manually activate the alarm. The little cheating hint to that is it's always at an exit, exterior exit, or an exit of that level. So if you are on the 3rd floor and you only have 2 stairwells that leave that floor, those are where your 2 pull stations are. If you are on the bottom floor, it would be at every exterior exit. Again, there's lots of different state regulations, what years it was built, but as a general rule, that is, you'll start to see the theme as you go into commercial buildings or throughout your building in the school. You'll start to see the theme of where those are actually placed.
Short answer, lightning round. Ready? Here we go. Lightning round number 1. Where is the best place to put a fire extinguisher if you have one in your classroom?
There are regulations to it. So first follow your regulations and then follow your local fire department. But as a general rule, you want them by the door. So the idea is, or by your exit. So the idea is there's a small fire in your room. You walk over to the exit to get the fire extinguisher. You then have the option to turn around, look at the fire and say, nope, that is too big. I'm out. And you're at the exit. But if that fire extinguisher is in the corner or in the closet, when you get there and you get the extinguisher, you no longer have an option to leave. You have only, I have to fight this fire for me to get out because I went further into the building rather than going to the exit.
Okay, lightning round question number 2. What is the most flammable thing in a school, do you think?
Ooh, I don't know. It depends on the school. There's gasoline, there's Christmas trees, there's all the decorations hanging off the ceilings. That's a hard one. It depends on the school. If you have a school, if you have a vocational school, it could be, the mechanics, the cars. That's hard. That's a hard.
Okay. And last lightning round question. Why are AEDs alarmed? Is it because you're going to yell at the kids that open them to mess with them? Or is there a different reason why they're alarmed?
It is to yell at the kid that's messing around with it, but you know that someone messed with it because the alarm went off. But the bigger idea is in running to get the AED, when that alarm goes off, you go, oh, someone must be using the AED. Now, that's a good example, too, of an administrator getting conditioned to, well, that alarm goes off because Johnny always hits it and just to make me mad. But it is a tamper alarm, but it is mainly an alarm to alert you that something is happening else in the building that you might not have already known about, or that you don't know that that person took the AED. The alarm goes off for that. And most of the time, those are actually local alarms, too. They're only in the cabinet. They won't set anything else off.
But it does speak to, you need to make sure your staff is aware that there is an alarm, what it sounds like, so that when they hear it, they know that there is something going on. And we've seen that in some of our assessments where the thing's been going off for 3 or 4 minutes and somebody finally wanders in and goes, what's that noise? And that they didn't have any idea that the AEDs were alarmed.
And then I guess my last lightning round answer with no question is, don't be afraid to call 911. There is a nuisance calling 911, but
like the chicken nuggets, where you didn't get enough chicken nuggets, and the lady there's one.
There's lots of examples of bad calling 911, but in my experience, we have a lot of, just as a quick example, how long have you had this chest pain? Oh, it's probably been going on an hour and a half, but I didn't want to bug you guys. It was in the middle of the night, blah, blah, blah. For the school, I would rather you call 911 and we get there and everything's fine than say, well, this kid's actually been bleeding for 2 hours now, but we thought we had it, but we didn't know what to do with it, or, well, we had that fire in the small little fire in the classroom, but the teacher put it out, so we didn't call. You still want us to call. You still want that report. You still want us to check. We can bring our equipment, our infrared, to make sure there was no extension or something else you're not missing. I would hate to have that case where I had the teacher put out that little fire and it wasn't a big deal, and then it's 3 o'clock in the morning and the entire roof's on fire because he didn't notice that it got extended into the wall.
Yeah, I would say in particular with fires, anytime you have a fire, it seems like you should get 911 in there. But I also think to your point about the medical stuff is you don't get in trouble for calling 911 for a cut, a head, let's say a head laceration that looks worse than it is. You guys don't break people up or chastise them, correct?
It depends. I can't speak for everybody, but most of the time it doesn't. So I'll have, do you want to end on your favorite 911 story from when I was in elementary school?
I think you might be referring to when I was an elementary principal and we had a car catch on fire at the carnival. I was running around because they were getting the fire extinguisher and everybody, and you were probably 3rd or 4th grade, and said, did you call 911? Did you call the fire department? You didn't say no. Did you call the fire department? And I said, oh, no. And hustled on back to my office. And I believe that must have been the trajectory that launched you. That was the catalyst that launched you to become firefighter that you currently are.
And there is the origin story.
There you go.
That starts.
You're welcome that I did that for you. Prove to you how necessary it was. So there you go. So there is another episode. I think we're going to have to bring Andy back to answer some pet peeves that are not necessarily fire related. But I think it's important we always act like we should be fixated on just one particular hazard. And we don't really pay enough attention to the different ones that present themselves when we're talking about fire instances. So that's our podcast for today. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.